Good day everyone. So we are here to discuss the chapter 6 item analysis and validation. So before anything else, I would like to introduce myself and my co-reporters. I am Christine Joyce Quiñano together with Panugo Charmin Grace, Raro Jessica Ann, Bainado Josie, Sepe Jessica, Bombase Luis, and Serio Elaine May. So at this very moment, I would like you all to listen because I will now going to begin our discussion. So what is item analysis? Item analysis, it is a statistical technique which is used for selecting and rejecting the items of the test on the basis of their difficulty value and discriminated power. The purpose of item analysis is to evaluate the quality of each item. The quality of item determines the quality of test reliability and validity. May suggest ways of improving the measurement of a test and also can help with understanding why certain tests predict some criteria but not others. So, item analysis is considered a process which examines student responses to individual test items or questions in order to assess the quality of those items and of the test as a whole. Meaning, view 1 to find out if each item is written exam has a good quality or not. So, usually kasi maraming gamit sa item analysis. Ang usual na ginagamit niya kasi ay ginagamit siya ng mga teachers. Ina-analyze nila yung student response dun sa certain test pero para ma-determine nila kung gaano ka-effective and gaano ka-fair yung examination nila. And also, pwede din siyang gamitin sa research kasi merong times na ang research instrument natin is a test. So, kung test ang gamit mo, you need to make item analysis. So, yon ang ginagawa niya lang is ini-evaluate niya lang yung create nating test kung gaano ka-effective or gaano ka-fair yun sa pagbibigyan natin.
Draft, subjected to item analysis and validation. Next is phases. In the item analysis phase of test development, statistical methods are used to identify potential item problems. The statistical results should be used along with substantive attention to the item content to determine if the problem exists and what should be done to correct it. There are three methods. First one is tryout phase. Second one is the item analysis phase or level of difficulty. And lastly, item version phase. It also plays an important role in the ability of an item to discriminate between students who know the tested materials and those who do not. The item will have low discrimination if it's so difficult that almost everyone gets it wrong or guesses, or so easy that almost everyone gets it right. The second one is the discrimination index. Index of discrimination, according to Blood and Bad, year 1972, is that ability of an item on the basis of which the discrimination is made between superiors and inferiors. Various hand calculation procedures have traditionally been used to compare item responses to total test scores using high and low scoring groups of students. Computerized analyses provide more accurate assessments of the discrimination power of items because they take into an account responses of all students rather than just high and low scoring groups.
Items difficulty or the difficulty of an items defined as the number of the student with the correct answer. Number of student, the item's difficulty, usually expressed in percentage. Example, what is the item's difficulty of the items of 25 students are unable to answer it correctly while 15 answered is correct. Here, the total numbers of students is 100, hence, the item's difficulty index and 75% and 100 or 75%. One problem with the type of difficulty index is that it may not indicate that the, the items is difficulty or easy, a student who does not know the subject matter will naturally be unable to answer the items correctly of the question in easy. Difficulty items tend discriminate between those who not know the answer, and easy items cannot discriminate between those two group of students. And an easy way to just measure it to how difficult an items to be in the upper 25% of the class, and how difficult is with respect of this in the lower 25% in the class. Example, the index of discriminate of the items of the upper 25% of the class had a difficulty index of 0.60. The upper is 25% got the correct answer, while the lower 25% of the class had a difficulty index of 0.20, and the range of difficulty index is 0.25. Interpretation difficulty and action numbers of discard, and 0.26 and 0.75 right difficulty and retain, and 0.76 above receive or discard.
So, hello everyone. I am Joseph Saron Bainado, and I will be discussing the index of discrimination. So, ano nga ba yung index of discrimination? Kapag sinabi nating index of discrimination, yung item na ito ay tungkol sa kung gaano nagkakaiba-iba yung mga sagot ng ating mga students. Parang pinapakita nito kung gaano kaganda yung test. And then, index of discrimination is a measure of how well an item is able to distinguish between examinees who are knowledgeable and those who are not, or between masters and non-masters. So, there are several ways to compute an item discrimination, but one of the most common is the point by serial correlation. So, this statistic looks at the relationship between an examinee's performance on the given item, or yung correct and incorrect, and the examinee's score in the overall test. So, for an item that is highly discriminating, in general, the examinees who responded to the item correctly also did well on the test, while in general, the examinees who responded to the item incorrectly also tended to do poorly on the overall test. So, here are the possible range of index of discrimination is -1 to +1 or 1. If the item has below 0, it suggests a problem. Kapag yung item ay discriminating negatively, overall, the most knowledgeable examinees ay nakakakuha ng tamang sagot. A negative discrimination index may indicate that the item is measuring something other than what the rest of the test is measuring. So, here is the formula of index of discrimination. So, as you can see, merong DU and DL. So, D represent the index of discrimination and U represent the upper group. Kaya, ang magiging basa nito ay discrimination index of upper group and discrimination index of lower group or yung DL. And as shown in the table, there are the index range, interpretation, and the action. So, una is yung -1 to -0.50. Yung interpretation nito is can discriminate but item is questionable. And the action we do is to discard. Second is the -0.55 to 0.45 or 45%. The interpretation is non-discriminating and the action is to revise. And lastly is yung 0.46 or 46% to 1 or 1%. The interpretation is discriminating item and the action we do is to include. So, let's imagine a scenario. A scenario A, B, and C. Sa letter A, if all the students in the highest group answered the item correctly, while not one of those in the lowest group selected the correct answer, this will therefore be a perfect discrimination. Again, a perfect discrimination between students who know the learning content and those who don't. Scenario B, if all the students in the highest and lowest group answered the item correctly, in this case, there is no discrimination. Again, there is no discrimination between the students. And lastly, the scenario C, if all the students in the highest group selected the wrong answer, while those in the lowest group have answered the item correctly, which such perfect negative discrimination occurs. A perfect negative discrimination occurs. Something is evidently wrong with the item and it should be rejected. So a question is that, does the index of discrimination only work for the correct answer? So what do you think? Okay, so index of discrimination is usually calculated for the correct answer. It can also be calculated for the distractors. Okay, kapag sinabi nating distractors, ito yung mga options na hindi naman talaga yung tamang sagot. So, distractors, this should all have a negative discrimination index. If may isang distractor na hindi negative discrimination index or index of discrimination, means more of your strong candidates are picking it than your weak candidates. So, this is a great way to identify broken distractors in an item. For example, is where another answer could be considered to be correct answer too. To sum it up, the discrimination index is one way of helping you to understand how the items in your exam are performing and is one that is used widely. And moreover, the index of discrimination is a very powerful and meaningful way of measuring the performance of your and our items. And that would be all for the index of discrimination.
Index of difficulty, so the proportion of the total group who get the item wrong. When we say index of difficulty is the proportion or probability that candidates or students will answer a test item correctly. And generally, more difficult items have a lower percentage or P is equal to value. So the formula of index of difficulty is P is equal to RU plus RL times 100 over T. The P is equal to value. RU is the number in the upper group who answered the item correctly. Then the RL, the number in the lower group who answered the item correctly. And the last one is T is the total who tried the answers. Validation purpose to determine the characteristic of the whole test itself
namely the validity and reliability of the test. So when we talk about the validation, it refers to the process of collecting and analyzing evidence to support the meaningfulness and usefulness of the text. Validity is the extent to which a test measure or are referring to the appropriateness, correctness, meaningfulness, and usefulness of the specific decision a teacher makes based on the test result. So, validity also refers to or referring to the appropriateness, correctness, and usefulness or specific decision a teacher makes based in the text. When we say validations, it talks about the process of collecting validity evidence. And the validity is result of validation. So, for example ngaya, sa pagtotal ng grades o pag-compute ng mga grades ng mga bata, kailangan natin ng criteria or rubrics para hindi bias ang pagtotal o pagbibigay ng mga marka. Kailangan natin may mga percentage tayo na babasehan sa pag-compute. Yan yung tinatawag na validation. So, ang validity naman, ito yung kabuuhan o total ng grado o resulta, kumbaga.
So again, good day po. My name is Luis Vincent Angangan Bumbase, one of the reporters of this lesson or these topics. So we're now going to the three main types of evidence that may be collected. So number one, content-related evidence of validity. So sa content-related validity, it is the evidence about the extent to which the test accurately represent the target domain. Kumbaga, ito yung ginagamit natin upang may ugnay ang lawak ng ating ebidensya mula sa ating target na domain. Kumbaga, dapat accurate ito. So, number two, citation-related evidence of validity. It is an outcome, can be disease or the behavior or performance. Concurrent validity measures tests and citations variable in the present, while predictive validity measure those in the future. So, meron itong salungat, kumbaga, the differences between the two. The next one is constructed related evidence of validity. Dito naman, evidence demonstrate whether a test measures its intended construct, where a construct can be defined as a conceptual abstraction. This is the use to understand the unobservable latent a variable that is responsible for scores in a given measures. So, dito naman, ito yung nagpapakita kung ang isang pagsubok ay sumusukat na nilalayon nitong construction. Ito naman yung kung saan ang isang construction ay maaaring tukuyin bilang isang conceptual na abstraction na ginagamit upang maunawaan ang hindi maobserbahan na variable na responsable para sa pagmamarka. Ito yung kumbaga sukat upang mabigyan natin ng marka ang ating mga estudyante. So we are now going to the next slide, which is the expectancy table. So sa table na ito yung kung saan gagamit tayo ng grade point average. So ano nga ba ito? Grading in education, ito naman yung process kung paano tayo magmarka sa ating mga student. Dito sinasabi is the process of applying standardized measurements of varying levels of achievements of a course. Grades can be assigned as a letters, as a range, as a percentage, or as a number. Dito naman, yung ibang bansa, ginagamit ito upang kaya kumbaga same process din naman yung ginagamit ng ibang bansa, and this in the Philippines na same process lang din yung ginagamit na pagmamarka.
Good day po, I am Elaine Mayserio at ang i-discuss ko po is about reliability. Reliability refers to the consistency of the scores obtained. Reliability refers to how consistently a method measures something. It means po if the same result can be consistently achieved by using the same methods under the same circumstances, ibig sabihin po ay kinoconsider na ito na reliable. Reliable and validity are related concepts po. If an instrument is unreliable, if cannot get valid outcomes po. As a reliability improves, validity may improve po or hindi po. However, if an instrument is shown scientifically to be valid, then it almost certain that it also reliable. Ang example po ng predict validity, yung National Achievement Test po or tinatawag natin na NAT, with first semester grade point average po. NAT po ba ay napipredict po sa college performance? Construct validity refers to the ability of a test measure what is supposed to measure po. Ang sunod ko naman po ang i-discuss yung standard follow almost universally in educational test and measurement po. Reliability po na 0.90 above, ito po ay excellent reliability. Yung 0.80 to 90 naman po, very good for a classroom test. 0.70 to 80, good for classroom test din po. Pero ang range, there are probably a few items which could be improved po. Kailangan pa pong ma-improve. Yung 0.60 or 70, mababa po. Pero, kailangan, pwede naman pong i-test ulit yung grades po para mas ma-improve pa po. And yung 0.50 to 60, kailangan na pong i-revise ulit po yung test unless it is quite short. The test definitely needs to be supplemented by other measures for grading po. Ibig sabihin po, more test pa po para mas ma-improve pa po. 0.50 or below, questionable reliability na po, this test should not contribute heavily to the course grade and it needs revision po.